Oh, yep. Got it. There's a fish. Oh, yeah. High 50s, you beauty. Nice. Little 3-inch first cast plastic. Sick. First cast 3-inch. Alright. He'd be a good scorer in the comp. Hook is out, won't let go on my plastic. Get back, you cheeky bugger. Guy's on too. What? Now you gotta go, bud. You are. Off you go. Back you go, Piggy. Welcome back to my lure box. In today's video, a whole load of flathead fishing tips and techniques. We've got the Wilson Elites Flathead competition coming up, and Jai and I are fishing it this weekend. So this is a bit like a pre-fish video. I'm going to take you through the techniques, the conditions that work, a whole heap of tips is coming your way, and some of my favourite lures to catch flathead this time of year. There's also a heap of details coming on the Australian Lure and Fly Expo. That's coming up in the next few weeks, and after the Australian Fishing Trade Convention is on again, and I've got a stall there. So all those details to come in this video. Stay tuned. This is going to be a good one. This time of year is a fabulous time to catch flathead, especially those school-sized fish. It's a lot of fun, it's great on lures, and you can get good numbers, and even the bigger fish are still available, and you can go chasing those as well. I'm going to take you through how I like to do that in this video, but first, I think it might be really helpful for you guys to see what you can work out on your phone, what apps you can use to work out a bite or plan for a session. For me, I'm planning for the competition this weekend, so I'll take you through what I think are some of the more significant conditions and factors going to affect the bite come this weekend. And then we'll get into the technique stuff with the rod and the reel and all the different lures and stuff. So I'm going to try and, what I'll do, I'll just hit record on my phone here. That's a record app that you can get through the control center on your phone. I'm going to open that up and I'll show you the apps that I'm running. So Willy Weather is one that gives me my wind prediction. You can use Windy as well, but this is pretty good. It gives you a wind prediction up to 5 days and a real-time wind direction as well when you're on the water. So I like to check that for the prediction that's coming, and then the real time is quite often it's a little bit different. So we've actually got a southerly at the moment and it's predicted westerly, but that's changing during the week. So come Saturday, if you have a look here, come Saturday, we're dealing with southerlies of around 10 knots in the morning, and it'll be slowly getting up during the day. And then the moon that is significant, the moon is entering towards a new moon, and on the Saturday we're going to have a moon set at 1:05, which will give us a moon above event. So there'll be a moon above around about 6 o'clock in the morning, which is also a significant bite time. And I can check that if I go out of Willy Weather and look at fishing times. This is a great app that gives you some of the solar and lunar events. So on Saturday, you can see here there's some bite times and things. I don't really look at the star rating. I like to look at sunrise, sunset, and the moonrise is there. So you can see right there at 1 o'clock, we've got that set, but early morning here is going to be another moon above, right with that change of light, and that's when that competition's going to be starting. So if we come out of that, we'll take a look at also the tides that we've got. Now I better get these tides right. If we go Paradise Point, I think that's where we're probably going to start. We're right coming into the top of the tide right now, and I'll talk about that once we get fishing, but that's what it's going to appear like on Saturday. So we're going to have the start of the run out at the start of the competition. It's going to be running out all day, and then we'll have a turn, if I'm still around Paradise Point, around 11:30, and then the competition finishes in the afternoon. I think it's around 4 o'clock. So we'll get all of that run in again. So when I'm looking at these apps and understanding how that's going to play, thinking about the wind, a southerly wind out here on the Broadwater and up the east coast tends to bring cleaner water, okay? there we go. So I've just, now that I've changed that to Paradise Point, it's saying slightly less winds, but it's still going to be a southerly, bringing that clean water in. Okay, and the weather's looking possible shower. So overcast conditions. I like to have the sun coming out, in and out, lighting up the flats and the sandbanks and the weed edges. And that gives me an ability to be able to spot those little weed pockets to fish in when I'm fishing really shallow conditions. I can see the pockets to drop and hop my lures around in, because we like to fish shallow, Jai and I. So that's what we use to look at. And then from there, we basically come up with a plan, and the plan has to do with that water. So if we're starting the morning with a run out tide, with the water that's been up on the flats overnight, for me, I'm going to chase big fish really early. Okay, now the competition runs so that this year it's about catching 10 flathead in each round. Right, now it used to be 5, and that really suited me chasing my really big flathead. Now that you're chasing 10 fish, it's unlikely you're going to get 10 80s. It's not going to happen in a morning or a day's fishing. So to go and chase 80s all day, you're probably going to do yourself out of those numbers of fish. We're going to try and get a bag during the middle of the day, but first thing early morning, we've got that moon above period, the changing light of the sunrise in the morning, and hopefully lower boat traffic, and then we've got the water up on the flats. So I'm puzzling that together, pulling all that together, and there's a lot of bait that's coming into the system at the moment, and there's tailor and things chasing them. They're going to be up on the flats early morning. All right, so I reckon there's going to be a bite for us with these bigger lures chasing the big fish during that bite time, when things are sort of all working together at the same time. So early morning, I'm going to be throwing for a real big fish, but I'm not going to sort of chase that too long into the day, because you still have to fill your bag of 10. And if you miss one fish, that could be 40, 50 centimeters that you miss out on in this comp. So that's how I'm going to approach it. Jai and I will tend to throw really big baits early like that and find those flats that are covered. So here we've got an area of big flats. You might be able to see out behind us, there's actually breaking waves out here, and this is in the main area of the Broadwater. There is a huge flat out here that has a big transient amount of bait and water pushing past it. It's a great sushi train for those big fish to park up on the edges of these big banks. Okay, and if it's early morning like we have now, they come right up onto these edges, and that's when I'll fish with these big paddle glides or my big soft glides. Now these soft glides have accounted for more big flathead than any other lure in the last few years since I've released them, and they keep getting it done. So it's going to be one of these two, and I like to use this in dirtier conditions. We've had pockets of dirty water coming through, so I've still got that tied on from last session. They all work, and I've caught fish on all of them, all the colours. You've probably seen the videos if you've subscribed to this channel. But the way to do it is to get up on the flats, especially early in the morning, before all the jet skis and that get out here. So I might take you through that now. Stop recording my phone. Yeah, stop that. And I'll take you through how I like to fish these really big baits to get these big fish. And if you've got the soft glides or the paddle glide packets, there's a QR code that comes with all of my lures that I've designed on how to do this stuff. But I'll take you through the basics of what I look for. You might be able to see the edge out there. So I've got a bank along here, a lot of water flow coming across. And the way that I like to fish these is huge long casts. The big flathead are very wary, especially on the flats. So you need to get a lure away from you so that you're not getting on spooked fish that have already taken off from their lie, but you're hitting fish that don't even know you're here. And then the way you want to approach it is by giving them the time to come up off their lie to a lure that has big drawing power. Now, a big bait like this, like a big whiting or a mullet, even a baby flathead on the flats, has drawing power like nothing else. The big fish are going to make a move on these because it provides them with such a huge amount of protein, a lot of food. That's the thing that can get those really big fish going. So fishing away from the boat, big long cast with a casting rod, braid of 10 pound or more, and a nice casting reel, like these Vanford 3000s are beautiful to use, that gives you the chance to get in touch with big fish that don't know you're there. The retrieve is dead simple, and I've designed these lures for every fisherman. You don't have to get technical with it. It's just 2 or 3 turns of the handle and then let it stall, and slowly these lures, they're beautifully balanced deliberately to fall exactly level back to the bottom of the seabed. And it's that slow fall that undoes these really big fish. The slow level fall of these big lures is killer for giant flathead. If you've subscribed to this channel, you would have seen a lot of the videos of me getting it done with these really giant flathead. So often it's just that repeated retrieve. Let it land out there, way out away from you. Give it the time to get to the bottom, and then it's 3 winds and let it return back to the bottom. And I'm fishing over about 1 metre of water. Around that metre mark is prime. So that's how we're going to approach it early morning. Okay, I'm really quiet on the electric, and I often will use this plonk, just this silent anchor, to help me hold my position if we need to stay still on the area of a sandbank or a mud flat where we don't want to disturb the flathead. Now this big fish technique, it's fantastic at big squeeze points. So here I'm right out on a point. I'm at the entrance to a river, and I've also got a flat with drop-offs. There's bait getting around. You can see there's a cormorant hanging off one of those sticks right out off the front there. It's watching, looking for bait. So there's bait moving here at the moment. They're the kinds of things you're looking for when you're chasing those big fish. Hopefully on Saturday we can put enough of these casts in the right position, these big baits, to pull that giant. Be recording all of the competition to try and capture it for you guys and to show you how we do it. But this pre-fish is more about when I come out before a competition. A lot of it is about looking at the water clarity, checking the heights of where the water's pushing and how it's moving over the flats, and just to get a sense of how these flats have changed. They're constantly changing, and since Cyclone Alfred there's been a lot of change. Often with all of that dirty run out that comes from a flood, you can lose yabby banks. So they can get all silted up and the yabbies aren't there anymore. And it might bring on another area where the yabbies start to turn up in big numbers. And that's where the whiting and the mullet and everything will start to move to. So getting a sense of where these areas are the week or 2 weeks before the competition is a great move in preparation. Also, how's the weed been growing? That's another piece of the puzzle. Like weed beds, the flathead obviously love them, and having presentations to fish through the weed is a great play as well. So I might take you through some of that stuff so you can get the sense of how I like to fish through weed and around those patches, because that's certainly going to play for us on the day. But remember, if you're after really big flathead tips, on my soft glides, that QR code, there's a ½ an hour video of just pure big flathead tips with these soft glides and the paddle glides. All right, I might change over now and I'll take you into an area that looks a lot more like what we're going to be fishing for these school-sized fish to fill a bag. We're going to transition into fishing in some of this really tight cover here in this mangrove swamp in a second. But while I remember, I've got to tell you, the Australian Lure and Fly Expo is on in that first weekend in July out at the Fernvale Showgrounds. Now, it's a fabulous show for all the lure makers in Australia, the lure designers. The handcrafted stuff's incredible. If you haven't been, you're missing out. I've covered it for years. So if you want to go looking at some of the stuff and the way it's set out, you can check out some of the videos. Actually, I'll link some at the bottom of this video in the description, but it's going to be fantastic. I'll be there with the stall again this year. I'm going to try and cover it as best as I can. It's a really busy weekend, but make sure you go and check that out. Bring your family or your mates and go and check that out. Fernvale Showgrounds. I'll put some details here over this video. The other thing that's coming up is AFTA 2025, and I'm going to have a stand at AFTA this year with some really cool stuff. There's some new products and some new colors of stuff that's coming, so make sure you put that in your diary as well. That's towards the end of July. All right, folks, we'll get back into the fishing. Well, a big part of the competition is being able to fill a bag full of fish, right? So that's those 10 fish that I was talking about earlier. So they're not all going to come on these really big baits. So you need to downsize your stuff if you want to get big numbers of smaller fish. And to do that, I tend to go around that 3 to 4 inch size. So I'll take you through some of the presentations that I've got. I might even overlay some footage here, but I'll show you some of the lures just to give you an idea. These pristine PT75s have got a beautiful tail action on them. They're a really small profile, and that's the bait that's in the system at the moment that's coming in. The tailor are smashing them, the flathead, the brim are all over them. So those smaller profiles are really, really good, really effective. One of my favorites is the Gobblers. Okay, does a 4 inch or it's a 3.75 inch. These little Gobblers, paddle shads, they're a fantastic option as well. And I put them on these sharp point jig heads. Another one of my favorites, I've caught hundreds of flatties on these over the years, is the Swim Prawn by Holt Productions. Okay, and my favorite is the 4 inch in that. And then if you're fishing around weed and you want to stay out of the weed, my jack burner lures, which I've designed specifically for mangrove jack, they get it done on the flatties as well. And I've caught heaps of flatties on these now. And that weedless system that has the hook point lower to the body, you can fish through weed a lot easier with that stuff and not get snagged up as much. So I'll definitely be using those in the comp. Another option that's really good, these clone prawns. I love these things. They got lots of appendages and you can rig them with an EWG hook, and I've caught lots of flathead on these things as well. Okay, I like to rig them with an EWG, which is like a weedless hook with a swinging ball sinker at the front and a twist lock in the front. It's a little bit of a trick to get it all right, but they're a fantastic little flathead lure as well. So the spots where we're going to do that, I've brought you in here to give you a look at a typical kind of a spot where you're going to find some school flathead. The tide has slowed a lot in here, and a lot of that has to do with these mangrove swamp edges, okay? And they provide cover for, it's like a nursery for fish and bait. So bait loves to try and get into these areas. There's the pneumatophore root line that runs along the edge, and then there's a drop off. Often when the tide's receding, so that's going to be happening around mid-morning, as the tide's receding, the water's coming out of those swamps and the bait's got to come with it. The flathead know to sit on the edge of these mangrove root systems. With that slower water, the lower current, right, there's a lot of weed that starts to establish in these shallower little pockets and these little areas, and you'll be able to see it with a good pair of Polaroid sunnies. You can pick up those weed edges and the little tufts of weed, and the flathead will lie in those and around them. You can often tell a flathead by the colour of the fish you bring up. If it's really dark, it's been in the weed. Okay, they can change their colour to suit the conditions. So a dark flatty, you might see some photos next week, hopefully, of some flathead that we've pulled that are really dark. They would have come out of the weed, okay? So the way to fish it, again, I try to be really quiet on the motor. And I've done enough fishing now to know if I'm changing the speed of that Minn Kota, it can spook flathead. The pulse that it puts out over the shallows, it definitely spooks the fish. So I try to keep my motor at a constant, or use my plonk, and then generally cast away from the boat with really light line. Okay, so like a 6 pound braid, maybe a 10 to 12 pound leader. And then I let the lure drop down the side of the pneumatophore roots, or off the drop off, or into the pockets between the weed, and then it's just a hop and drop technique where you let it get back to the bottom with like a little 1/4 ounce jig head, for example. And the paddling tail on these PT75s, the little Gobblers, paddle shads, they work on the way up and the way down, and that's what you want. Okay, you want something that's moving on the way up and the way down. My jack burner lures do it as well, except that's a level fall, so it falls like a bait fish sits in the water, it falls down like that, and I think that's a really effective presentation too. Hopefully you can see that little PT75, the way that tail gets going. It's a fabulous little trigger for a flathead. Now to get these casts and the retrieves right, that light line is really important, but to get the hook up right, if you've got a nice sensitive rod, like a 1 to 3 or a 2 to 4 kilos, something around that 6.5 to 7.5 foot long rod, that will be really good for the cast and for the retrieve to get the action right. And then something like this 270M, this is a Zodius by Shimano, okay? The 270M is absolutely ideal for school size flathead fishing, and I use this for bass, Saratoga, flathead, a whole range of species. But the best part about it is you can feel a bite with slack line on one of these rods. So they're really sensitive, and often you're going to get taken by the flatty. The bite comes on the drop. The flathead sees the bait fly up, and as it's falling, it comes and grabs it or nips it off the bottom when you've got slack line. So often I feel the bite through the slack line and then set the hook, and that's probably most of my bites come from that. Without that sensitivity through the rod, you're going to miss a lot of the bites or not get the right hook set. So again, the run out tide for me is all about fishing these areas where the water is pulling bait out over edges, into drains, out of the mangrove swamps, and the flathead are in waiting and they're ready to feed, and they feed really hard too. It's a lot of fun to fish like this. And these little 3 to 4 inch size presentations for school size fish, that's the go to get your numbers, I reckon. That's what we'll be doing. Okay, a couple of other bits of kit that I like to use when I'm out flathead fishing. I'll see if I've got it sitting out here right now. So this stuff I'm constantly using scent. Whee, just got it. I think it was a brim butt. Constantly using this S Factor by Squidgy. I like to run my pliers. I've got a plonk there, definitely your sunnies, polarized sunnies, and a glove for handling the fish, a wet brag mat, those kinds of things. And always, I'll show you what else I always run. Really easy catch and release the fish using my Environet. All right, folks, wish me luck. The Elite Series is up this weekend. I'm going to record it all and bring it all to you over the next couple of weeks. There's a whole lot of flathead fishing action and other species in the weeks to come. I'll see you in the next video.